Rob had fallen asleep on the seats by the kitchen. Remembering Stephen's death had brought tears to his eyes, making them feel heavy. He'd thought of going to bed, but had been unable to will his body to move, eventually passing out. When he woke up, the morning light shining brightly on his face through the kitchen window, he quickly made a simple breakfast, packed up what little he had used during the night, and set off for Sanitaire, eager to know whether or not the ghost had appeared again. He was quietly hoping that it had. That way he knew what he was dealing with. If it had only appeared once, that could mean the ghost had achieved its goal and had crossed over, ceasing to exist. On the other hand, it could also mean that it was biding its time before its next appearance, leaving Rob no choice but to dig up the corpse. The journey from Malham to Sanitaire took less than an hour, though with the size of the camper Rob had trouble finding a parking space big enough in the small town. Eventually he pulled up in the car park of the local public house, the Widow's Peak, a fitting name for a building positioned on top of the slope housing the town, hoping there wouldn't be a problem. Gathering a few things, including the girl's address, Rob walked over to the door of the pub to see if there was anyone inside. When his knocking went unanswered, he left a note on the door, explaining that he was in town on business and would be happy to pay in order to stay in their car park, considering he would occasionally want to hook the camper up to their electrical supply. Not knowing the town or the names of any of the streets made it difficult to find where he was going as he made his way from the pub into the main part of the town in the hope of finding the address on the piece of paper. Rob had never believed in satellite navigation systems, refusing to purchase one, usually relying on his map or a printout he had taken from a website, but in the absence of any information other than the note, he had to stop at the end of every street, searching out the sign that would tell him whether or not he had the one he needed. After 15 minutes he finally found the road he was looking for. The house in question was right at the end, forming a cul-de-sac with its large garden encircling the house, a bicycle path running down the side the only way through to the streets behind. The road ended at the driveway, almost as if it had been designed specifically for the house in question, despite it being the other way around. The house itself was impressive, though not really to Rob's tastes. He took a moment to admire the workmanship that had gone into making it. Unlike the other houses in the street built in the early 1900s, this house had been constructed within the past 20 years and was designed to a completely unique specification. The outer walls were made from the stone of the building that previously stood in its place, a feeble attempt to make the house blend in with its neighbours. A wooden porch was erected along the front, unlike anything Rob had ever seen in England, other than as a veranda on a caravan. The porch was an American design and looked out of place in this little Yorkshire town. Large windows dominated the facade, making the upstairs landing visible from the street. Attached to the side of the house was a two-storey double garage. There was no need to check the address twice. Just looking at the building, Rob knew it was the handiwork of Mr. Campbell. He knocked on the door, patiently waiting for an answer, knowing from experience that at 10 in the morning some people may still have been in bed, while a lot may already be at work or on the morning school run. The door opened cautiously, answered by a young woman with a puzzled look on her face. As the opening grew larger, Rob saw that she was in her early 20s, long brunette hair flowing over her shoulders, deep brown eyes conveying fear and delicate red lips pouting. She was slim, wearing close-fitting blue jeans tucked into knee-length high-heeled boots, with a black top that hugged her figure and showed off her natural assets. This had to be the Katie he was looking for. "Miss Campbell?" he asked cautiously. "Yes?" she replied, her voice wavering. "I'm Mr. Dean. I believe BCI Peterson told you I was coming to speak to you?" Rob had purposefully dressed in clothes that wouldn't be too intimidating for a young woman, opting for a grey and white t-shirt, blue jeans and black boots, beneath a black material trench coat, with multiple pockets on the inside for his emergency supplies. It was the one piece of clothing he almost never went without. He knew he didn't look like a police officer, but he hoped that would help put the girl at ease instead of making her feel like she was being interrogated. "Oh, hello," she said, loosening up a bit. "There's nothing to worry about. I'm just here to ask you a few questions." "Really?" "I answered the questions that other policemen asked," Katie said, opening the door fully. "But the detective said you would be able to solve the case. Is that true?" "If there's a case to solve, there's every chance I'll be able to solve it. Why don't you tell me your version of what happened?" A hint of a smile broke on Katie's face. She held out a hand to Rob, which he shook before showing him inside. They walked through the all-white living room, where Katie offered Rob a drink, but he declined. "Are your parents here?" Rob asked, looking around at the white curtains, white carpet, and white three-piece suite, almost afraid to enter the room, before slowly taking a seat on one of the sofas. "No, they're both at work." And my brother and sister are at school, Katie replied, sitting on the sofa across from Rob so she could look at him and study his body language. Great, that just means we can talk more openly. So tell me what happened. You'll think I'm crazy, just like everyone else. Well, tell me what happened and I'll tell you if I think you're crazy or not, Rob said with a smile, which he was glad to see Katie return. Katie recalled a story Rob had already heard from DCI Peterson, and while he could have stopped her as soon as she began, he let her finish, knowing it could be therapeutic to victims if they got everything off their chest. And you think it was his ghost? Rob asked sympathetically. What else could it have been? Andrew's dead, and it was definitely him. It certainly sounds like some kind of ghost. Have you seen him again since that night? No, but why should that make any difference? And why are you not surprised by any of this? Katie asked, perched on the edge of her seat, eyes focused intently on Rob. You haven't looked shocked once. I've seen a lot of things in my short career. Nothing surprises me. But normally with ghosts and spirits they have unfinished business with the mortal world, something they didn't get to say before they died, wanting someone to know who murdered them, or with you possibly just wanting you to know of his death, since it sounds like you two were pretty close before you were sent away. We were, Katie said, blushing. Do you think me finding out about his death could have been enough to free his spirit? It's possible, but we don't really know unless he appears to you again. I don't want that to happen, Katie said, her body stiffening. I've been terrified these past few days. I've hardly been able to sleep, thinking the ghost of a guy I used to fancy is haunting me. A shiver went down Katie's spine, making her jump in her seat. Is there anything you can do to make sure he doesn't come back? Well, there is, Rob said, but it's tricky. What can we do? Did your father tell you whether or not Andrew was buried? Yeah, he's in the cemetery just down the road. Why? Because his spirit may still be attached to his physical body, which is how he remains on Earth. Only those people who are buried come back as ghosts. What do you mean? If a body is cremated, there's nothing left of that body, or not enough of it for a spirit to latch onto. They can't stay earthbound. And what if they were buried? Then I need to dig up the body and burn the bones to free the spirit. Are you kidding me? You want to dig up Andrew's body? It's either that or let you be haunted for the rest of your life. But... Katie stalled. But what? Rob urged. We don't even know if it was really his ghost. Don't you think it was? Of course I do. There's no other explanation. But my parents have almost convinced me that I'm imagining the whole thing. And do you think you are? No. It was too vivid to be in my imagination, and it doesn't make sense. I got here from Harrogate in less than 45 minutes. It normally takes about twice that time with the roads leading up here. You can't go anywhere near the speed limits. Then it probably was a ghost, Rob said calmly. You say that like it's a normal thing, Katie snorted. To some people it is. What? Katie exclaimed. It depends what kind of things you have to deal with on a daily basis. And you deal with things like this? Similar. I try to explain the seemingly inexplainable. I can give people answers that the police and rational thinking can't. Whether or not you choose to accept that or believe that is completely up to you. Just know that if you want me to try to stop this ghost, you have to be willing to help, Rob said, gazing directly into Katie's eyes. If you decide you want me to do something about it, I'm in the big camper van up at the Widow's Peak. Talk to your parents about what you want to do. Then come see me. We can't do anything until after dark anyway. Rob could see that Kate was about to protest, but he held up his hand, stopping her. Getting to his feet, he walked to the front door, turning only briefly to shake Katie's hand after she had followed him. He hated playing cryptic mind games with people he was trying to help, but he had to be sure they truly wanted his services, otherwise he might as well not bother.